Hello everyone, this is Stas and welcome to my new TouchDesigner tutorial, and as you might guess from the title of the video and from what you see now, it would be about glitches. And there are a lot of different kinds of glitches and glitch imitations, from a simple one where nothing really much is going on to very much severe one glitches, or more like data motion effects where some frames freezes and it's not updated frequently, and also somehow related to glitch, different types of such kind of liquid motions, and we talk a little bit about this, and also about tiling. And anyway, a different kind of glitches. And because this topic is so huge and so broad, it would be not, we wouldn't do everything from scratch. Rather, I would show you different kind of approaches to the glitches. There would be a lot of references to other tutorials, other posts in the community, Shadertoys and everything. And I also will share this file, and the green components would be shared for everyone on my Patreon, the public post, and the orange ones is available only for my Patreon supporters. It would be another post, but I'll explain what's going on in every of those, so if you want you could create everything by yourself from scratch. Alright, and first of all, let's talk about the... Okay, maybe let me turn this off. I'm also not sure how YouTube will be dealing with all of these effects, and maybe after I upload it, it will be even more glitches from compression algorithms. So let me start from the very basic, or not so basic, but common type of glitchy effects approach. Let me turn on myself again. Okay, it's a feedback loop with displacement, and if you want to know about this in more details, or you could watch this short video by Nunes with a pixel sorting, or this a bit bigger video from William, but I'll show you a simple version of it by myself as well. Okay, we need a feedback loop. Feedback loop goes to Displace, stop. We need something to displace it. Let's use a noise. Put it here, and for noise I will use just noise, and it should be 16-bit float, offset 0, amplitude a little bit smaller, and here source point 0, and displace of it would be not so big, and usually I prefer red and green, and I'll explain it why later. And we need composite this feedback effect with something else, and in the composite you could use a different kind of nodes, different kind of operations. By default I actually prefer pin light, and in the tutorials I mentioned usually they use different kind of operation like difference or maximals, but I found that pin light usually works quite interestingly, and maybe I need to swap. Yeah, pin light with swap operation order, or you could just switch it here. Okay, all right, maybe let me increase. Okay, that's fine. Sometimes you would like this kind of blurry effect. If you don't like this blurry effect, you check the smoothness from interpolate to nearest pixel, and now it looks more glitchy. And sometimes you need to reset a feedback, and a simple method to do it frequently, just for while you building not a pulse, sorry, a beat with output of pulse, and it gives you a pulse from time to time, and you could set the time here, the period. So I don't need to press the reset button, I don't need to press anything on the keyboard, it would be resetted from time to time. It's very good when you prototyping the effect, at least in my opinion. Okay, so if you want more sharp effect, you will use nearest pixel. If you want more smooth, I actually recommend not to use interpolate, but rather use a mid-map. I don't know, for me it looks better. And of course you could experiment with different, okay, difference not working with this one. Lighter color, good. Usually that's I film and Z film, usually very strange glitches. So it depends on what do you want to get. Okay, I'll stay with pin light. Stay with pin light and the nearest pixel. And now it more looks like a displacement and more a little bit of data mosh type of effects. And there is a different type of effects like pixel sorting. And if you want more pixel sorting, what you do, you need to smaller noise. So you could just make a very small noise or use the random. And usually pixel sorting appears in one direction. So you could use the math and multiply, for example, red channel to 0. So now we only have the movement in vertical direction, or maybe you could do it more or less or whatever. And by changing the values, you could also regulate how big or small this effect would be. And actually it's not pixel sorting. I mean, it's not a real pixel sorting. It's a pixel sort imitation. In a real pixel sorting, we need to sort all the pixels from the brightest to the darkest. And this is a kind of very heavy operation, and even heavy for GPU, because the sorting doesn't work very well in parallel. And GPU works very well in parallel, but sorting, it's sort from one part and sort, so it's a consecutive okay, I mean, you got it. Hopefully, I just forgot the English word for consecutive. Yeah, consecutive. Maybe not. Okay. Anyway, so this is fake pixel sorting effect, and I'll show you real pixel sorting like 5 minutes later. But believe me, real pixel sorting, it's not very useful for camera input or for video input. Okay, but you don't need to use noise, and of course you could use GPU. Sometimes it's interesting to use, for example, the edge. Oh, by the way, if you use noise, you could input second input. Use the Berlin again, and maybe from 0 to 1, from 0 to 1. And it looks a little bit different with this effect when you use the second input. Here, if you use edge, it's again a little bit more different, and depending on the strength and depending on other parameters, you could also change the overall look of the effect. And now what's going on? Again, I don't need, or maybe the opposite, just for fun. Okay, now we have pixel sorting in horizontal direction. Okay, this is edge. Also, you could use the threshold, you could use the cache and difference, or you could use, for example, the tools optical flow. So input, optical flow, let's close and let's just connect it here. And now it looks a little bit different. Maybe increase the force. It's again now looks more like data motion and some corrupted data. Maybe you would like to have a little bit blurry. This one again from nearest pixel to mid map, and now I have such kind of effect. Okay, probably that's it about the Displace version. If you want to know more about using Displace, as I say, I could recommend you this tutorial, this one from William, or this data mosh approach from Paqueta 12. It's also with a displacement effect. And I will back to this approach a little bit later. Okay, that's it probably, yeah, that's it. Let's go on, because we have a lot of different stuff to talk about today. Also, I'll leave this kind of examples to you so you could check. Depending of if you have the image with alpha or without alpha, the preferences, you could go inside, see a preference here. For example, I'm using edge and I'm using different composite types, and depending of composite type and depending of what you got here, you could achieve with the same technique very different effects. But as I said, sometimes the images or video with alpha and without alpha looks very differently, and some effects that works very well for images with alpha doesn't work so good without alpha. So you need to experiment a lot with different composite operation and so on. So I'll leave it to you to explore. And now let's go to real pixel sorting. Okay. Oh, this is also not a real pixel sorting. It's actually very similar to what we done before, but it uses the GLSL. And the difference between TouchDesigner feedback and some abilities of GLSL is that in feedback loop, the operation in the feedback performed or executed operations every frame. So it maximum it's 60 frames per second, so the operations perform 60 times per second. And for pixel sorting like effect, sometimes you want to have more than 60 to have a little big movement. And here it's pixel sorting based for my microphone. And it's found here, and it's converted from Shadertoy and converted by Alex Guevara. So I'll leave a link somewhere, or you could use it here. And it's also interesting to explore. And again, this is not a real pixel sorting. Now let's go to real pixel sorting. This one is a pixel sort by David Brown. You could find it. This is the Shadertoy conversion, and here is David Brown GitHub on TouchDesign shared. I also leave a link on the top section. There is 3 components: Betonic merge sort, Betonic columns, and Betonic columns fixed bottom. And I'll show you columns version. And if you're interested what is Betonic merge sort, you could Google it, and there is a Wikipedia article about Betonic sorting and many others. And here, as you could see, let me move here so you could easily compare the real camera image and what's going on. This is a real pixel sorting. The darkest pixels on every column appears on the bottom and the brightest pixels on the top. And as I said, for the video, usually it's, I don't know, I'm not sure how you could use it for the video. I mean, you could use it, but why you need this effect, I don't know. And just to show you that it's working, here I have a dark pad, and if I move it to the up, here it's also appear on the bottom because it's sorted, so it goes down. And if I move down, it's still down, nothing changes. So if you want by some reason a real pixel sorter, you could take it here on the GitHub of David Brown. Very nice, and actually it works in real time, but it's quite heavy. So it uses a little bit of CPU and a lot of GPU. And I have pretty decent card, and still it's not super fast. The alternative to the Betonic merge sort, another real sorting is a CUDA sort GitHub repository from Vincent Hughes. And it goes with, it works like a plugin, and here is described how you set up it, and it also goes with an example how to use it. And Vincent used this for such kind of pixel sorting for sorting the particles based on particle position and displaying it after rendering on different positions. So you could check his example. It's very interesting to see how pixel sort could be used in rendering setup. Okay, and another pixel sort related stuff is this Shadertoy. Again, I'll leave link in the description, but I also have this link here in every. So it's shader by Slurpee from Shadertoy and my conversion of it. And this is, it works a little bit faster. Well, actually 10 times faster, mostly, almost. And it's, I like that it's like a balance between both. It's not a real pixel sort, but it's look very much like a real pixel sort. Again, if I use, let me again put it here. If I use this pad again, it appears on the bottom, and eventually it will sort it out. But it do it a little bit slow, and actually I like how it looks. Probably, I mean, aesthetically I like this effect, and with different speed it looks a little bit differently. So give it a try. But as I said, the orange containers is available for my Patreon supporters, but I will leave the link to the original shader in the video description, so you could convert it by yourself if you want. Alright, let's move on, and let's see a different type of displays. Well, actually I almost showed it to you already in the very beginning when I created this base. So it's just a reminder for you that you could use Displace with a little bit different settings, not to pixel sort, but to create such kind of images, more data mosh looking. And again, not forget to check the input smoothness. So if you're interested, you could And of course you could combine a different type of edges, noises, and maybe it will create a little bit different effect. Okay, so not much going on here. We already discussed it. And let's talk about the pixelate, because also what's happening in real glitches. By real glitches I mean glitches that occurs that's not designed but occurs by some technical fault. What's going on with glitches? Usually it's some kind of displacement of the positions. So how to create such kind of effects? I like the pixelate from the palette, from image filters. You could pixelate any image. So if I put my image here, and let me turn off this so it's not distracted, it's just pixelate image based on number of horizontal pixel size and vertical pixel size. And when the pixel size is fixed, it's okay, but it doesn't look very glitchy. But what if we use a noise for creating this pixel size? Then it will be more glitchy because it changes all the time, and you could set the speed with the speed of noise. And now if you use this pixelate for the noise or for the edge, and again then use the displace, it will create such kind of effect. And also what I want to discuss here is the difference between remapping and displacing. It's two very similar operators. We already discussed displacement. For the displacement you give a top with some values, and based on these values it will displace. And for remap, instead of displacing values, you give the whole UV map. And by the way, there is a very simple method to create the UV map in GLSL. I can show it to you right now. If you want to create UV map of a certain width and height for a certain resolution, you can go here. Here's a VUVST, which is UV map, and if you put here VUVST, comma 0.0, 0.1, that's it, and we have a UV map. And we could turn this on. It's this one. And if I use the real UV map, nothing is displaced. Yeah, nothing is displaced. But if you add some kind of displacement to the UV mapping, just an add and add a displacement, it will be displaced. And sometimes with why you would ever need this remapping if you have displace? Because sometimes with this kind of UV map it's more easy to see what's going on, because here you could see how it's moving, how tiles are moving. And also if you're working with tiles, experiment with extend values. Would it be hold it, what's going on, or repeated, or maybe mirrored? And it creates a little bit different kind of effects. And right now with the noise it's okay, but not so fascinated. If you want to create more interesting glitches with this approach, you will need to create more interesting UV map. And one of examples is this DataMosh tutorial from Packeted Valve. Watch it, it's kind of short, and it uses here, as you could see, UV UV remapping, and let me try to find the end somewhere over here. So as you could see, this final displacement, it's very messy, and you could do it all in tops, like in packeted valve style, or you could do it not in tops, but somehow different. For example, oops, what's going on here? Okay, for example, here it's a pixelate. I call it pixelate effect. I have this one on my Patreon. It was shared some months ago, and it creates this kind of UV map. And now it's with a feedback loop, it's a little bit harder to understand what's going on. So let me use instead my camera, and if I remap. So originally it was created to do this kind of fractal images based on noise or based on movement, but why not to use the same UV remapper for creating some kind of displays? And again, the very same approach, and here I'm using displays, but you could use remap. It's up to you. If you use UV map with displays, you just put a very tiny weight here. So again, create some kind of weird UV map, and it will create some kind of weird glitches for you. Okay, and another remapper is this one. I like this one. It creates this kind of very messy UV map in GLSL, and it works not super fast, but okay. It also depends on setup. And it's again, it's taken from Shadertoy, but original shader, it was for the different purposes. Let me show it to you. So originally it was used for this kind of effect, and it was designed specifically for this input. And this input is a grid of symbols. So it was like, if I remember, it's 16 by 8 or 16 by 16. So it works really well for 16 on 16 grid. And I simplify this code a little bit and reuse it for very different purposes. And also you will need to create the UV map that consists from tiny UV maps. And the way of doing it, the very simple way of doing this, is the crop. Not everyone knows, but there is a common use of a crop if you crop the image from a different direction. But if you go to different direction and to make it more than one, it creates a tile. So with a crop tool, with a crop top, you could easily create a tile. And do not forget to set it to nearest pixel. Okay, so you create a tile, and then you use GLSL for creating such kind of strange remapping. All right, let me drink. Another kind of effect. And since we already started talking about Shadertoy, on Shadertoy, by using the word glitch, maybe, you could find a lot of different examples. And some of this is on MIT license, some of this on a Creative Commons license, and different kind of licenses. So sometimes you could use it on commercial projects, sometimes you couldn't. And I converted some of the shaders to TouchDesigner, but again, sometimes you couldn't use it. So why bother doing it then if you couldn't use it in commercial project? Because if you look on this shader, on the effect, you could see this as a puzzle or a task for yourself. How you could recreate this in TouchDesigner. You could just analyze the effect itself. Okay, here we need probably the pixelate and change some pixels to the green or cyan or magenta colors and do a little bit of displacement, not super much, but something. And probably that's it. So if you want, you could recreate it by yourself. Or you could use the different setting, and this effect may be a little bit harder to recreate, but if you have an intermediate GLSL knowledge, you could go into the code and try to understand what's going on here. Actually, with using usually on a composite, if you use Y film or Z film, or sometimes when you use the hue, this kind of colors sometimes occur by itself. But what I recommend to you is to use this component or the Shadertoy as puzzles for yourself and try to recreate such kind of glitches. Some of them are simple, some, for example, like this one, it's just a shifting with a little bit of RGB delay. Probably you've seen it, maybe not. Here we have RGBA delay, and if I put it here, you could see the delay of my input. Actually, here it's not RGBA, it's cyan delay, but it's really easy to convert. Okay, and what else I have here? And yeah, again, delay and some kind of blocks like we discussed earlier with remapper. So you could use this as a puzzle. And if such kind of effects it's a little bit complicated to you, I could recommend you the easier level of puzzles to try. I don't need to pause. I need to turn off my camera here. Okay, and there is a site called PhotoMosh.com, and if you use the webcam and press the mosh, there is some kind of very simple effect, different kind of glitches, and here you have some setups, and if you analyze it, if you turn this off, it's much easier to understand what is going on. And you could try to recreate such kind of effects in TouchDesigner and maybe share it on the forum or somewhere else. I like this site because it explains how to create such kind of image. You need to pasteurize the image with some little bit, you need to change to lower down the saturation and add scan lines. Yeah, scan lines may be a little bit difficult, but if you see on it, so how to create scan lines on TouchDesigner, probably it's just a noise that moves downward and a little bit diagonal. So noise and the transform and the feedback, something like this, or maybe some other way. So you could click through it and try to recreate it. Okay, let me turn this off and let me turn my camera on here again. Okay, let's move on. Okay, it's almost an hour already. Now, one of my favorite glitches is stream glitch. Unfortunately, this kind of glitch works only in commercial version of TouchDesigner. Let's go inside. How it's created. It uses VideoStream Out and then VideoStream In. And if in VideoStream In you will use the tiny amount of network queue and the tiny network buffer size, and on Out you will set the bitrate pretty high, you will get these glitches, because even though it runs on your computer, on your network, it still cannot process so much information, so it creates glitches because it couldn't be sent and received with such settings. You could experiment with different kind of settings, but overall, high bitrate here and the low network size and network queue here. Also, what's important here. What's important here? Sometimes when you move the network buffer, as you could see, for example here, I'll pause. Sometimes when you move the values, the VideoStream In becomes black and connecting to the server and not connected. And if you just put it to the output, some of the frames would be black as well, and probably it's not what you want. So here is a simple solution I come up with. I'm using the analyze top, and analyze top gives me the average operation of the all pixels and it returns me 1 pixel. And then I convert it to the chop, and if this pixels equals to 0, so if all of this is black, I'm just turn and switch to input 1, and input 1 is my original stream. Another thing you could do is to use, for example, like here is a simple motion detection. I'm using the cache and returning output index, so what's going on 6 frames ago, and depending on how much I move, again the same analyze top, this value, for example, if I move a lot, the values is very high. If I move not so much, the values are pretty low. And I could, by analyzing the amount of movement, I could trigger something and use this parameter. Did I use it right now? No, I didn't, but I could use it, for example, for the bitrate, for example. I could change the bitrate based on how much I move. Or I could change network buffer size or something else, depending on how much did I move. Oh, now we have very a lot of glitches, but probably that's what we want. Okay, I turn off it now. And also an interesting settings here is number of slices per frame. If I set it to, for example, 2, what you have here is like, let me try to do it with the camera. Okay, you have like 2 slices on the screen. If I set it to 100 or 1000, maybe it's too much. As you could see, we have a lot of lines. And again, depending on what you prefer, you could set different type of slices. And this is actually the closest thing that comes to real data motion effect. Again, usually when you see data motion tutorials on for TouchDesigner, data motion effects on Shadertoy. It's not real data motion. For real data motion, you need to delete keyframes and it creates data motion, and you couldn't do it in TouchDesigner, unfortunately. But this video stream out, video stream in, sometimes it happens. Sometimes while you pass in the information from your network, some of the keyframes are lost, some frames are lost, especially if you set everything to 0. Okay, stream glitch, very nice, but only for commercial version of TouchDesigner. One of a good reason to buy it. Okay, time machine glitch. Usually, let me turn this off. Usually time machine top used for different kind of setup. So you put texture 3D operation, is this one here. It creates, it works mostly like a cache, but it caches everything inside one operator. And here my cache size is 120 frames. And then you could use time machine top. Let me disconnect here. You could use time machine top, and time machine top will offset these frames based on second input. And if I use the ramp, the most common use of this, I want my ramp the same resolution. Let's make it vertical. Let's make it 60-bit float. Mono probably will work. Okay, the most common use is to create such kind of slit scan effect, and you know it. Let me turn it down. You know, you could rotate it, and after rotation it occurs then like this spiraling motion. But you could use the texture 3D and time machine for a totally different effect. If instead of ramp you use noise or edge or something like this, or maybe feedback loop like I did here, and again if you use time machine, it creates also something looks like a little bit like data motion, because some frames are delayed, some frames are not delayed, and if you create a very strange and not predictable network here with the feedback or with something else, sometimes it's really hard to say what's going on. So it looks really like some kind of glitchy, strange effect. Or like here with the blur, it looks like a little bit of like liquid. And it also depends on what the settings, it's which one the white value or the black value would be delayed in time. Minus 10, and so it's good to experiment with the both options. And of course you could if I do super quickly the noise instead, the noise 16-bit float mono or fixed mono. Okay, and now it would be also something interesting probably. So experiment with the noise, experiment with the everything, and you'll get some crazy effects. Alright, this is it about time machine approach, and we move to the last component I want to talk about, is a glitch compositing. Because usually if you want to create something that looks really like glitch, what the easiest way to do is to combine all of these techniques or some of these techniques together. And here, for example, I'm combining this pixelate effect that I mentioned earlier. Let me turn off so it wouldn't be that weird. I'm using here the texture 3D here with pixelate. So some of pixels, some of tiles are delayed. Here what's going on is the same for the noise. Actually I need only RNG channel. I'm thresholding. One thing maybe if you never use the matte top, let me show it super quick. Or actually I could go to operator snippets and hopefully there is matte effect here. So the matte effect, it just shows the first input on the white values and the second input on the black values. So here I'm matting, so some of the pixels are real, goes from the camera and not distorted, and some of the pixels are distorted. And here I add a different kind of distortion. It's more like a pixel sort, faking pixel sort effect we talked earlier. Again, matting with different type of threshold, and in the end I have this kind of effect. And if you remember, sometimes on the glitches the green pixels are different kind of bright, very bright and off color, totally off color pixels occur. So I'm using this noise image to create such kind of bright pixels. And yeah, and depending on what you have for your computer, the more powerful GPU you have, the more difficult, the more bigger network of different glitch compositing you could create. And actually, when I told you about this, the real pixel sorting, I forgot to mention that it doesn't look really aesthetically interesting by itself, but if you composite it, even if you composite it with the camera, it's already, it could be interesting, it could create some interesting effect. And it also, you can imagine if you put it with composite with different kind of effects, it also could be interesting. But as I mentioned, it's a little bit heavy, so it's up to you. So probably that it's, I will share this network we built in the beginning as well. And that's it for today. Hope you learned something new. And if you want to get all of these examples, go to my Patreon and you will find all the links in the description of the video. And that's it. Bye bye. And let me finish with some glitches. Yeah. So bye bye.